Welcome back to your weekly dose of whiteboard video. Today we're going to be ranking the worst motorcycles from Japanese manufacturers. Logan, are you excited to do this one?
I'm as excited as always, but a little bit disappointed that we're sticking with the Japanese, not talking about any Chinese motorcycle brands, but we do that just at a later date, huh?
We could, yeah, maybe in 2030, once the kind of wheat has been separated from the chaff, so to speak. There's like 400 different Chinese manufacturers, but today there's only 4 big Japanese manufacturers: Honda, Kawasaki, Suzuki, and Yamaha. So we're going to tell you the worst bikes from each manufacturer. And unfortunately for today's video, we do have to start with my preferred Japanese manufacturer, and it's Yamaha. And we got to call a spade a spade. The MT-03 finds its way today on 8th on our list as one of the worst bikes currently on sale. Logan, why is this bike not that interesting?
Yeah, so there's 2 ways to look at it. So Yamaha has a kind of a Spartan offering list, right? They only make a handful of very good motorcycles in each category.
Sure.
So like the bar is kind of high for them, right?
Yeah.
The MT-03 takes the cake because it's the master of torque, or in the lineage of master of torque. This puppy makes 20 foot-pounds of torque at 9,000 RPMs. That's, borderline unrideable for someone, a full-sized adult,
It's true, yeah. And this bike does kind of suffer the kind of like 3/4 bike thing that, the kind of Triumph Speed 400s, because it is sort of like an overgrown Grom, like it is barely, in my opinion, like street legal for American streets. And we're gonna have someone commenting saying like, why do you gotta go 90 miles an hour? I'm like, look, we live in Texas. I have to tell you guys things that exist in my personal sphere. And if you ain't doing 90 on the highway here, you're gonna get run over, okay? And an MT-03 just is not gonna cut it. We actually had one of these as a giveaway bike way back in 2020, and we actually did a super crazy sprocket swap on it to try to juice it up a little bit. And it ended up having a top speed of like 72 miles an hour, but it was fun getting there. And it actually did feel like a spicy master of torque. So let's give Yamaha a little bit of credit here. This is a beginner-friendly motorcycle. This is something that someone's gonna buy for their first bike, not keep for a while. Great training tool. But there are just better, smaller naked bikes nowadays, like the Z500. I mean, if you want to go Chinese, you got the, what is it, the NK 450?
450 NK.
Yeah, 450 NK.
Or the KTM 390, Duke 390.
Okay, that's 3 like pretty good motorcycles on top of it. Basically, Yamaha's got to update this platform. It's high time they change something about this bike. Give it a more juicy engine. Do like a tiny cross-plane twin. Do a cool, make it have a burbly sound, a little bit better torque.
CP4.
Put a baby CP4 in. Now we're into the weird dreamland stuff scenarios. But the MT-03, unfortunately, is one of the worst bikes on sale. Moving on.
So Honda's the opposite of Yamaha in the sense of making a million different types of motorcycles. They're kind of like the Chili's or the Applebee's, right? They got something on the menu for everyone. You get pizza, hamburgers, tacos, they got it all. And with that, with Honda, you get some weird stuff, like the Honda Fury, their factory OEM chopper situation that's very much a holdover from well over 20 years ago now, and the heights of the American chopper craze.
Yes. Yeah, really the revitalization of the chopper craze, right?
Completely,
It was like the mid-2000s thing with like West Coast choppers and the TV and all that. Jesse James, right? They were very in vogue. And my belief is that Honda produced like a billion of these, right? And they were like, we're gonna sell a ton of them. It's 2008, the good times will never end. Right. And then the global financial recession happened. And then I think Honda has had these parked in some warehouse somewhere for decades at this point. And they just keep slowly releasing them. They're like, we've written off this inventory, the books are good. We just have to sell a couple of these a year and we'll be A-okay. Because this bike doesn't really have enough bombastic energy to be a chopper.
It's still a Honda, right?
Yeah,
like
it's still a Honda.
It can only be so exciting, so bombastic.
It can't be too crazy. So in 2026, they only sell it in this kind of like drab military, like muted green. It has a 1312cc liquid-cooled V-twin. Like, if you're gonna have a chopper, you need a 2200cc air-cooled V-twin, 2 valves per cylinder. It needs to be pink and like red, right? Like it has to be sparkly paint.
Yeah, you gotta have the big wheel, the crazy paint, the really like aggressive raw engine characteristic. Like it's supposed to feel somewhat adjacent to, or at least inspired by, like the hand-built choppers that were cool at the time. Cool in whatever, way you wanna understand it.
Well, I actually saw a guy a while back. He had like a really ratty out, leather jacket. He was like hitting the suicide shift on his chopper, like going down the road, no suspension travel. And I was like, all right, you know what? Like, you're so committed to the bit. That is actually really cool. But yeah, Honda's factory chopper ends up being sort of like, it's not demure enough to be a Honda, but it's not exciting enough to be a chopper. It finds itself in a weird middle ground and very like just phased out. I don't know why Honda's still selling these.
Yeah, they got those insanely big frames, and they're like, okay, we literally cannot cross-platform this in any way, so we just gotta, gotta sell. So we'll talk about some other cross-platform Hondas a little bit later in the video.
That is true. Now, you knew that Suzuki was gonna find its way on the list today, and you're probably thinking, oh, he's gonna talk about the GSX250R again. No, I actually have a different bone to pick with Suzuki, and it is the new DR-Z4 Plus. First of all, mouthful of a name, Logan.
Yep.
Absolutely ridiculous that you have all these letters and acronyms and symbols all together in there, right? Second of all, what are you thinking selling this motorcycle for $9,299? We're talking about 25-year-old tech that you put a fuel injection system on it and you didn't even give it an extra gear. I think Suzuki's just really seeing how far can they push the yellow simps out there.
100%. And I'm kind of the belief any product has plus at the end, you're getting screwed. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah.
Like Disney Plus, I don't need Disney Plus. Give me Disney regular. I'm gonna pop in my Bambi VHS tape like it's 1999 again. I don't need them. Disney Plus, they cropped The Simpsons, like you miss visual jokes. It's horrific, terrible business. So I see DR-Z4 Plus. I'm like, I'm getting taken for a ride if I sign on the dotted line for that bike.
Yeah, it's already immediately like putting a bad taste in your mouth. You're like, what are you doing here? And the only thing Suzuki has going for this, it's like, oh, it's bulletproof reliable, it's yellow, we put a skid plate on it and some hand guards. And I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
Come on, dude. Like, this is not some groundbreaking. This is like a 320-pound dual sport.
333.
333. That is a pig. It continues to be a pig. It's always been a pig. So the Austrians got you covered here, and especially dual sport guys, you're here for a good time, not a long time, right? So get yourself a KTM dual sport. And this is edging close to KTM dual sport prices.
Or middleweight adventure too, if you're looking for something more in that vein. But yeah, $9,300 is a lot of money for essentially a 21-year-old dual sport.
I'm like, what do we do? How do you get to this price? How do you get to this price? And I know it's been beat to death, but it really blows my mind that Suzuki is out here selling stuff for this much money.
Egregious.
Yeah, but as we've talked about in pre-production and some other places here on Yami Noob, it's like they do make them in Japan. They do use Japanese labor. Maybe they have those high quality metal parts in them, and that's what you're paying for.
Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe.
Speaking of old motorcycles, I'm trying to think of a segue, but I'm rolling off the cuff here. We've got the Kawasaki Versys X300. So this is another interesting thing we were talking about. When there's some strange delineation in the model name that separates it from the other motorcycles in the family, like they're like, we don't want you to think of this as a full real Versys to like devalue the 650 or the 1100. We're like, this is a Versys X. This is something completely different. Keep your expectations in line.
That's what the X is for. Low expectations.
Yeah, there you go. That's clever. Good.
So the Versys X300, it is the only Versys X. They don't have any other Versys X. And I'm just like, wasn't the Versys already kind of like adventure adjacent? Why did they like separate this? Why did they keep making it with the 300, which is at this point like a 14-year-old engine platform? And then they made the KLE 500, which I'm like, why wasn't that like a Versys X 500? There's a lot of confusion around this bike, and I'm still sort of like flummoxed as to why Kawasaki makes it.
Yeah, and it's like, if you want this sort of versatile, like tall rounder type thing, you get like Honda's CB500 is probably more well adapted to that type of lifestyle, you know what I mean? Of comfortable, pretty normal, maybe somewhat banal, but utilitarian, functional. Like there are other bikes that do this better, and for like around $6,000, like crazy value proposition.
Yeah, crazy in the sense of it's not making a lot of sense.
Crazy bad.
Crazy bad value proposition. This bike doesn't have any of the cool features that a lot of the new age, like small adventure bikes have. Like I think the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450 is better equipped than this thing. Punchier single cylinder, Ibex 450. And look, those are more like adventure ready. They have a 21-inch front wheel. And you can say, oh, there's nothing quite like this because it's, a little more sporty. To me, it's not really doing anything really well, right? Like Logan said, if you're looking for something that's a long distance commuter, something more versatile, something larger, there's no reason why you wouldn't just get a Versys 650 at that point, or look at something like the Transalp, because at $6,000, you're like, well, that's already quite a bit of money for a new motorcycle that doesn't really do a whole lot.
Yeah. And yeah, a lot of the competition, it's like, are a little bit more expensive maybe, like, you know, KTM 390 Adventure or whatever, but you get so much more motorcycle, you know, in both performance and capability and staying power, right? Like a Versys 300, you ride that for a season and be like, yeah, I was bored last year.
Yeah. I think the only reason you would get something in this kind of like 300-ish cc or sub 300cc category is you're very price sensitive. And that's something we've talked about here on the channel, where there's a new burgeoning class of like sub 300cc machines that are coming in ultra cheap, ultra simple. And I think those are great in the market, but this bike is not doing any of them really well. It's not cheap enough to be a sub 300cc value prop like the 300 SS from CF Moto or the Honda XR150. And it's not nice enough or powerful enough to be competing with the 450 class bikes. So a lot of, like, similarly MT-03, this like Japanese 300 class, they're just like holdovers from like 15 years ago. They gotta go. They gotta go or figure something else out with them.
They gotta go or the Chinese are gonna kill them.
That's right. All right, boys, quick pause in today's video because I need to ask you an important question. How many times have you gone out for a ride only to end up in the most boring, straight, traffic-laden roads imaginable? You finally get a free afternoon, hop on the bike, and somehow your leisure ride turns into a commute simulator. That's exactly why the Kalimoto app exists. Kalimoto is built specifically for motorcycles, not cars, pedestrians, or electric scooters. It doesn't care about the fastest or most efficient route. It cares about the best route. We're talking twisty back roads, elevation changes, and scenic overlooks. The kind of roads you'd never find just punching directions into Google Maps. You can dial in how aggressive you want it too, from winding or extra twisty if you really want to scrub off those chicken strips on your tires. Kalimoto will generate entire round-trip rides for you, so instead of guessing where you go, you just pick a direction and ride. It'll even layer in gas stops, viewpoints, or lunch spots along the way if you so choose. Plus, everything can be saved offline, so if you're out in the middle of nowhere, you're not just winging it and hoping for the best. If you actually want your rides to feel like rides again, not just errands, check out Kalimoto. We've got 2 codes in the description box. Use them on the Kalimoto website to get either a 30-day free trial or 10% off of your first year. Thanks to Kalimoto for the support in today's video. Now let's get back to the show. All right, Logan, I know this is the one you're most excited to talk about because it's from Honda. And as we were saying, Honda has the Chili's, Applebee's menu of motorcycling. You can get whatever you want from Honda. And sometimes there's stuff that's on the menu that probably shouldn't be there. Like if you go and order like the Asian special at Chili's, like don't get the noodles at Chili. Don't get the ramen at Chili. Not a good idea. And I think the Honda SCL 500 is Honda's offering of like Chili's ramen.
Yeah, 100%.
Where you're like, what is this thing, right? So go ahead, stoke your ire for everyone to hear.
The SCL 500, just fake looking scrambler ass, but strictly a styling exercise, right? It's very much a Rebel 500 with some tweaks here and there to make it look kind of more like a scrambler, retro roadster. But as far as, Japanese motorcycles go, I guess it's sort of uncontested in that, beginner segment of something of that style. But when you move outside of Japanese manufacturers, Triumph's 400, way more interesting. Like Triumph owns that look, right? And then
much
even
more successful.
Yeah, and then even the Royal Enfield's like, I'd be rocking a Scram 411 before I'd be, riding around in a SCL 500.
No, for sure, for sure. Yeah, the SCL 500 to me is so overly stylized for what it is, and has none of the charm and character that you'd expect from a scrambler style bike. It reminds me, there's a bike we're going to talk about later, and I don't want to spoil it too much, but other manufacturers have done this where they take an existing platform and they just throw something up against the wall and they're like, oh, let's make it look like this. And it's like, unless you designed it from the ground up, or when you created the cross platform in general, you're like, oh, one day it's going to be a scrambler, it doesn't really work. And so what's a scrambler meant to do? It's meant to dabble a little bit off-road and look really stylish doing it. The SCL 500 can't really go off-road and doesn't really look stylish. So what are we doing, right? And it's expensive too.
$7,000 a month.
$7,000. You're knocking on the door of used Ducati scrambler prices at that point. And again, Triumph owns this category. Like, I think if you're getting a scrambler, it's a triumph for Royal Enfield, and it's gonna look way better and feel way more authentic.
100%, and look cooler, and yeah, like it just has that like Fisher Price, like baby's first scrambler look to it, and I don't like it.
Yeah, it's a pretty big miss from us here on the channel. So Honda SCL 500, fourth on the list. Let's move on to podium places. What are the worst bikes from the Japanese manufacturers?
So for this motorcycle, I didn't actually choose it during pre-production, but I'm happy that I get to announce it. It's none other than the Yamaha Bolt R-Spec.
R-Spec, wow.
And so I was previously praising Yamaha for, having less motorcycles, but they're all pretty darn good.
Yeah.
I do not feel that way about the Yamaha Bolt R-Spec. Japanese motorcycles are so good, obviously leading, in many ways beyond obviously the Italians, have established everything that's good about motorcycles over the last 50 years.
Yeah.
What they're not good at doing is making charming, characterful, retro-inspired stuff, really. That's like when it starts feeling like a kind of cheap, derivative cash grab. They're going after the penny-pinching cruiser boys that don't want to shell out the money for a Harley Davidson. It does nothing for me.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I don't think there's ever been other than maybe the Kawasaki W800, which is a separate thing, because that's harkening back to their own legacy, which in of itself was a derivative of a Triumph Bonneville, let's be real, right?
For sure, yeah.
But you're so right, like they've never correctly executed on like an old school bike. It's like they can't do it, and that's fair because they're so good at other stuff. They're like, we're gonna make bikes that run really well and efficiently and are engineered beautifully that you ride and are just so well put together, and I love that about Japanese bikes. But yeah, the Bolt R-Spec to me is everything that's wrong with that type of bike. So big air-cooled V-twin, but not big enough to be like enticing to cruiser guys. A 942cc, but it's
girls' bike.
Girls' bike. It's an 883 Sportster basically. Has inherent geometry and handling problems. These are prone to wobbling, so like they don't even correctly do the motorcycle thing. All the components feel cheap and weird and just like it doesn't come together. We rode and reviewed one of these a long time ago, and it was genuinely one of my least favorite bikes that I've tried. And I actually like the Sportster a lot. I want to let you guys know it's not like, oh, I just hate cruisers. I love charming, interesting air-cooled motorcycles. I recently just purchased one because I like them so much. More on that in the coming weeks and here on the channel. But I love cool bikes like that. But this one, I don't know how they got it so wrong. But I have to do a special, one more note on this. A special shout out to a bike they no longer sell. Thank God. They made a scrambler version of this bike. And if they still made that, that would be #1 on the list.
Yeah, you can find those like when we've been doing pre-production for like the Facebook videos. Once every couple months I'll see, I don't remember the exact name, but that scrambler version with like 500 miles for like $2,500 or like $3,000. No one wants them. Like they're literally giving those things away.
Yeah, because it's a cruiser made into a scrambler. I'm like,
because they also did the like C-Spec, which is like the cafe racer version, and people didn't like that very much either.
No. So Yamaha, if anyone at Yamaha's listening, just axe this whole Bolt thing. Make like a Rebel 1100 style cruiser. I think people would be down with that.
Yeah, because I think like their V-Star, which is a teeny tiny like V-Star 250. There used to be other Star cruiser models, right?
Yeah.
That were more just akin to the traditional metric cruiser, and which in and of itself is fine, right? The Rebels are great, like because they're not trying to be an American thing.
Yeah, I think the Rebel 1100 is so successful because it does its own thing. It's a parallel twin. It's lightweight. It's really cool for what it is, and it's different. And so I think if Yamaha made like a CP2 powered cruiser, I think it could do pretty well as a Rebel competitor.
Sure.
Because Rebel is the 500 and the 1100. The CP2 would kind of slot in between those two. So hey, pretty good business idea. Yamaha, hit me up if you want any more of them. That first one's free, right? So Bolt R-Spec. And then what's up with the R-Spec?
I know, I don't even know what that was.
Why is it, what makes it R, you know? It's just to make it more like R bike styling. Again, like Logan said, Yamaha, they don't have a lot of bikes and most of them are fantastic. But the Bolt R-Spec, like what are we doing? Heinous. Moving on to #2, which is equally heinous. All right, Logan, I did allude to it in the beginning, and of course it found its way up top here. Year over year, I keep talking about this bike and nothing changes, and that is the Suzuki way. It is the GSX250R, a motorcycle that suffers the same fate as the X300 in that it is way too slow, way too small, and overpriced. If this bike cost $3,200, this would be a smash hit. I would not include it in this list. I'd be like, okay, Suzuki's pulling like the
beginner
light category. But this is a $5,100 bike, base MSRP before destination, tax, title. This is, can you even imagine out the door for this? It would be like $6,300.
Yeah, no, it's unthinkable. It feels almost criminal.
Frankly. It is, yeah, it feels criminal. Yeah. You've never had the displeasure of riding one of these, but how does this strike you?
I mean, yeah, it's just in such an interesting and dynamic category that's seen so much attention, not even in the last 5 or the last 10 years.
15 years.
Yeah, and it's like so, heavy and underpowered, and the fact that Suzuki still makes it feels insulting, you know what I mean? Like they think people are still gonna buy it, which they must be or whatever, I don't know.
They must, yeah.
Yeah, and again, it says same thing as the Versys, where it's not a GSX-R 250.
No.
It's a GSX250R.
Different thing.
Because it has to be a different thing, otherwise people would freak out. I'm just really hoping that Suzuki doesn't fail upwards once again, and if they keep making this bike, $5,100, in 10 years, an average starter motorcycle is going to be like $12,000 or something, when it's just like crazy late stage capitalist dystopia. And then, but they'll have kept it $5,100, and it'll be this like weird heirloom thing, and people will freak out about it like they do like the Gixxer 750 or whatever.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, they're like, oh my God, you can still get like a tried and true, reliable Japanese parallel twin for $5,100 or whatever. So it's like, the whole entry-level category, it's like when I started riding, it was right when we started getting like the 3 and 400s, not even 400s, the 300s. So like the R3 and the Ninja 300, that was back in like 2014. And that was when it was getting really exciting, KTM RC390. That was when Suzuki should have done something, should have made anything. But Suzuki won't make new things. And yeah, it's been 15 years now, and we still they don't have anything in the entry level category in this kind of like sub 500cc like Ninja 500s, CF Moto 450 SS, which are incredibly popular bikes. And if they made like a GSX 500R that was yellow and looked cool, nobody would buy CF Motos.
Yeah,
nobody, like Suzuki, you made this happen with CF Motos. You left a gap in the market for these squids and these broccoli heads who have abandoned you because you make slow, small little bikes that broccoli heads can't get behind because they're cash strapped. That's my diatribe on that. So what's number one, Logan? Come on,
number one.
Let's see it. Because if it's not the GSX250R, what could it be?
Yeah, so the other motorcycles on the list, required some nuance, some articulation. How do we determine the ordering and this and that? This motorcycle was a no-brainer, Lib. This has to be number one because it eschews everything a motorcycle should be in weird, crazy ways. Is of course the Kawasaki Ninja 7 Hybrid. A hybrid motorcycle, the first and only of its kind. It must be amazing, right? No, it's the worst Japanese motorcycle on sale today.
And I have proof that it's the worst because there are several of them for sale at our local dealership, have been for sale for years. They cannot sell them. Nobody wants to buy them. So on that metric alone, I think it makes it the worst. Just anecdotally, I'm seeing it's not happening. But there's so much wrong with this bike. It is super heavy. It is confused as to what it's even supposed to be. Is it a super sport?
Right.
Is it a commuter?
It's a hybrid, bro.
It's a hybrid, which like, motorcycles are already incredibly fuel efficient. We didn't need to make them more efficient, right? Like there's no environmental regulation hey, like bikes are already getting 60 mpgs, we gotta get them into 90. It's like, well, what about all these giant trucks?
And like I would almost wager too, because it is so underpowered and compromised with like the smaller engine and the like e-boost system and stuff, I would wager that in terms of overall efficiency, like including your time and how long it takes to go somewhere, how much fuel you're burning it's just like running, I guess whatever. I think it's a very inefficient motorcycle because internal combustion for motorcycles, was already optimized, right?
Yes.
And so by trying to change it, it's like you're just making it harder and more complicated. And it's limited to like, 65 miles an hour with e-boost or something?
I think so, yeah. It's limited to its speed, and then on top of that, you look at the marketing for the bike, and it says something like, oh, it's faster than a 1000cc using the e-boost off the line, and I'm like, so is it like a super bike, or is it a commuter? Like, what is this? And the worst part, it's $12,500, right? You're banging on the door of like MT-09 money. You're talking about Hornet 1000 money if you're looking at, Japanese competitive motorcycles. Like, why on God's green earth would you spend $12,500 on a Ninja sport bike that can't do anything a Ninja sport bike is supposed to do.
Yeah, you'd be better off spending that money on like a 636, even knowing the engine might blow up. You know what I mean?
Totally, yeah. It's more expensive than a 636. It doesn't make any sense to me. Who is this buyer that's going to buy this bike?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think it's just another classic like Kawasaki side quest of like, well, we've got all these like, engineers and all these like resources with heavy industries, all this stuff, and they're like, well, I guess we can try it out.
Yeah, that definitely is Kawasaki's MO. It's how we got the H2s and stuff. They're always trying new stuff. This one I feel was a total step in the wrong direction because yeah, if you want a fuel efficient two-wheeler, it's a e-bike or it's a scooter. We've already solved those problems. If you want performance, it's a Japanese 600 or 1000. We've solved those problems. We don't need to mix those two together. Also, I just remembered this thing's an automatic.
Oh, yeah.
So like, what are we even doing? What are we doing with this motorcycle? It's an automatic. So yeah, Ninja 7 Hybrid is a mess, and I think it'll go down as one of the biggest blunders in motorcycling.
Yeah, we will talk about this bike in 10, 20, 30 years, the way people talk about Suzuki trying to do the rotary engine stuff and, of all these kind of feats of curiosity, inquisitive exploration and what even is a motorcycle, and then be like, oh yeah, a motorcycle is an engine and two wheels and a manual gearbox. That's what we all want. That's what is most fun. That's what's the easiest to make. Stop messing around with these hybrid things and rotary engines. And
that's why 99% of bikes are that. They're chain-driven, rear-drive, manual transmission, naturally aspirated. Yeah, the curiosity element has to end at some point. So, boys, those are our rankings of the worst Japanese motorcycles on sale today. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Again, it was kind of hard because Japanese manufacturers mostly make great stuff, but they do have a couple blunders here and there. Thanks so much for checking out today's video. We appreciate it. We'll catch you in the next one. See you later.